was at our summer conference at Asilomar a couple of weeks ago, one of the talks was given by Dr. Roger Teal, who is the minister at the Mile High Church in Denver, which is our largest center. They have about 15 or 16,000 members. They're a little larger than us. And Dr. Roger has been there for some time, and he's really one of our, as you might imagine, one of our clearest teachers and so forth. And he gave a talk that was based on the idea, he talks about the term, and you've heard me use the term many times, grace and ease, usually within a spiritual mind treatment. You know, we usually say something about, I know that I am now healed, that my problems are resolved, that whatever I need comes to me with grace and ease, right? And what he was suggesting was that while grace is wonderful and essential, the ease part we might want to rethink. And I thought that was an interesting idea. And we'll talk about that a little bit. So I want to begin by looking at what is grace from our perspective, from the standpoint of how we see the world in our teaching. So does what we seek have to come with ease? You know, I've heard it said that if you're truly aligned with your good will show up, and if there's any strain or struggle, you might be on the wrong path or something like that. And I also know of times when it didn't come with ease. And if I'd walked away when it got difficult, I never would have manifested what it was I was seeking. I remember when I first was a new member, actually not a new member, when I was a new first-timer and early in my time at the Fort Lauderdale, then Church of Religious, or Science of Mind Center it was called, now it's the Center for Spiritual Living, Fort Lauderdale, back in 1989, I instantly got very excited about the teaching and about the ideas behind it and the community there. And I decided to join and become a member and take classes. And my first Sunday there happened to be Memorial Day weekend, so I began right at the beginning of the summer. And within a few weeks, I went into the office after service and I signed up to be a member. And what they would do then was about every 3 or 4 Sundays, they would announce new members and give out membership cards, as we do here. And I was waiting the next time, that they were announcing new members. I was sitting there waiting to be called up, and I wasn't called. And I went in the office after the service, and I said, when they announced new members, I wasn't called, and I came in and did the application. Well, we don't have any record that you did that or anything. They lost it. So we did it again, And you think, well, gee, that's interesting. And then a few months later, actually a couple of months later, classes were beginning in September, and I went in and signed up for class and paid my tuition. Got to class the first night to register and check in, and they didn't have my name on the list. Had no record that I paid. And I said, you start to think, is something going on here? Is something happening that I'm not aware of? Is this supposed to be a sign that maybe I'm in the wrong place? But I persevered and, stuck with it. Obviously, here I am. But, I could see if I believed that everything should come with ease, that I might have walked away at some point. Well, if this is too difficult, I'll walk away. It must not be right. Now, when we look at grace, and this is a sort of a paraphrase. Actually, it goes off the bottom of the screen, doesn't it? But basically, it's Dr. Holmes in the glossary of the textbook, The Science of Mind, says grace is the givingness of spirit to its creation. It is not imposed upon us, but is the logical result of the correct acceptance of life and a correct relationship with spirit. So grace is something that is part of the universal expression, and grace is present when you bring yourself into harmony with truth, would be a good way of putting it. So we definitely want grace. But the thing is, grace is automatic when you bring yourself into that mental and emotional alignment. When I'm out of alignment to whatever degree, I don't experience the fullness of grace because I'm out of alignment. Okay, so we do want grace, but grace is there when we're in alignment. What's alignment mean? It means that whatever my deepest truth is about whatever it is I'm focusing on, that my surface thoughts and feelings are consistent with that. Otherwise, I'm not consistent with my inner truth, and we probably all of us have areas of our lives where we're out of harmony with our deepest inner truth. You know, you can tell when you're out of harmony because you suffer. You know. Now, the goal of our teaching is not to get to the point where we don't have any difficulty in life, really, but it's to recognize that when difficulty does show up, we're greater than the difficulty, if that makes sense. So one of the things Dr. Roger talked about was salmon. And recently, some naturalists studying the salmon who come back to spawn in the Columbia River in Oregon, they very carefully studied how the salmon work their way upstream. You know, you've all seen the story that when they're out, they live out in the ocean, then when it's time to spawn, to reproduce, they come back, they have to go against the river all the way back to the source where they were born, and in the act of spawning, they die. Never appealed to me very much, but that's what salmon do, right? So we've all seen the pictures of the salmon kind of jumping up the waterfalls and so forth, and usually there's a bear there, you know, just waiting. Okay. When I was in law enforcement, we used to have a saying, some days the bear gets you, some days you get the bear. That was kind of our... But, you know, and I always just thought, well, the salmon just kind of go higgledy-piggledy and jump up over the rocks as best they can, and you know, they make it, they don't. But one of the things this study showed was that salmon are actually making choices that certainly instinctively drawn, but that there's been some kind of a learning process over the generations somehow. And what the salmon do when they're deciding where to go in the water is they don't go right for the rocks, they go for what's called the swift flowing current, the strongest current coming against them. Because they know where that current is strongest, there are the fewest obstacles. See, the rocks would slow the flow of the water down or divert it, but it's hard to get over the rocks. But if you go to where the current is swiftest, you can move through without hitting the obstacles, but it takes more effort and energy to swim in that kind of a setting. So they're looking for the strongest current against them. And that's where they know they have their best chance of moving forward. I'm getting hungry. So what Dr. Thiel was talking about was, he says, you know, the concern, he says, it's not that you don't want things to come easily from time to time, but the concern is that we get a mindset where we say to the universe, I'll only accept it if it's easy. I'll only, you know, it's like we're telling the universe what to do and how we will be available to it. And it's not to say we don't want things to be, you know, in a sense of ease, but the recognition is that some things aren't going to be easy because, A, it could be that's just the nature of the thing, or B, it could be because we have created a consciousness at some level as we grew up, as we came to this point in our lives, where we have identified that the only way to get something is to really have to work hard for it. And that may be a part of your consciousness that doesn't necessarily give up its grip very easily. You know, have you ever caught yourself affirming in your mind that this is really difficult, or things don't come easy to me, or I have to really struggle to get what I want? Why is everything so hard? And the answer might be because at some point as you grew up, people who were influencers in your life either modeled that for you or told you that, and you accepted it. You know, things don't come easy for me. I have to work harder than most people. How do you know that? Well, that's been my experience. And probably you could sit down and if you could really see and re-experience your experience, you'd find out that you may have misinterpreted some things. Often we get into this sense of that if I'm really using this teaching effectively, I shouldn't have any difficulty in my life. And what that leads to is a sense of guilt and shame when things don't go well, when we appear to need to struggle or be in difficulty for a protracted period of time, or be in pain. And what we end up doing is using the very power of our mind that can set us free to make that prison walls even smaller. So I think the lesson here, and as Dr. Roger talked about it, what came to me clear is, when I'm moving toward what I desire, and last week, if you remember, we were talking about Viktor Frankl's model of being sick or not sick, where he says 99% of people live their whole lives being sick or being not sick, and not sick just means I'm not sick. It doesn't mean I'm thriving, which would be way over here. And when I'm in that pattern of sick, not sick, sometimes my best moments are simply an absence of pain, which is better than pain, but it's not what we're capable of. It would be sort of like going into a fine restaurant and asking for table scraps. There's a banquet available to you, but you've decided and somehow you've become convinced that you can only have what's here. And if we want to move over to thriving, which is a big distance, there's a little not a big distance from sick and not sick. There's a huge distance over to thriving. And if I'm standing here at sick and not sick, and I say I want the universe to heal me with ease, the odds are when I'm in sick and not sick, I haven't accepted ease as a viable way of changing my life. And I may be, you ever become suspicious when something's too easy? Wait a minute, that's too easy. It should be harder, Another thing when we're in sick, not sick, we are suspicious. We're suspicious of things that are different or outside of what we're used to. Often we begin to see the world as a very dangerous place that's confusing and complicated, or where people are trying to take advantage of you, or systems are trying to take advantage of you, or something like that. So when I feel that way, what happens is I kind of hunker down to be safe, or at least have the illusion of safety. And what fear does, fear closes you in. It's like putting blinders on a horse. They put blinders on a horse so the horse won't have the peripheral vision and see the other horses in the race, so that the horse won't be afraid of them, and he or she will just keep focusing on going straight ahead. But the blinders we put on often blind us to the potential that exists outside of our comfort zone, outside of what we've decided is a safe place for us to exist, primarily in terms of mentally and emotionally. There's an old Chinese saying, I don't know if it's Chinese or not, to be honest with you. It's an old saying, if you keep heading in the direction you're going to end up where you were going to end up to begin with, right? And if you don't like where that is, you're going to have to change your route. So your inner GPS, in order to get to thriving, if I'm stuck at sick, not sick for a long time, in order to get to thriving, my inner GPS is going to be going recalculating a whole lot. Because I got to keep changing my route. Because if I stay here and I stay on the route I'm on, I keep getting the results I've been getting, which is fine if that is good for you, if you're happy, if you're feeling fulfilled, if your life is filled with passion and joy for how you're living. And I know for many of you that is, at least in some parts of your life, maybe not universally. But I also know for many people that for much of their life, in terms of how they view themselves, they're kind of stuck in this little hunkered down position. And the more fearful I become, the less likely I am to step out of that comfort zone into that dangerous arena outside of my known reality. And the problem with being here is I'm easily convinced that my worldview is true. I'm easy to frighten. by someone who will tell me something that seems consistent with my belief and carries my fear even deeper. We see that happening in our political system today. You know? Have you noticed any political ads seeming to encourage fear? I was in a swing state a couple of weeks ago in Virginia, and we were in the hotel and turned on the TV a little while, and must have seen in an hour 10 political ads. You know, California nobody cares about because, you know, it's pretty foregone conclusion how things are going to go here. So we're not inundated with the ads the way some of the states are. And not one of those ads that were both for national and state and local politicians had anything uplifting to say. Not one. Now, why do you think they do that? Because it works. Because they know that almost everyone they're talking to is in sick, not sick. There's no sense talking to the people in thriving. There's not enough of them to sway an election. It's true. It's true. My goal in my lifetime is to have enough people in thriving that that's who they'll focus on. And the whole tenor of our system will change. But until that happens, they're going to talk to where the majority is. And they'd be foolish not to. They'd be foolish not to. I was at Fenway Park last Monday for a baseball game, one of my bucket list things. And it was incredibly expensive. Now, the last time I was at a baseball game, I think I paid $20 for a box seat right behind home plate. This was considerably more. But it was a great experience. It was fun. I like baseball, and that's kind of one of the most special places in baseball lore. But I was walking around looking. I got there early because I figured I'd have dinner at the ballpark, and I don't eat hot dogs, and I don't eat stuff like that. So boycotting Chick-fil-A hasn't been a big issue for me. But and I'm looking around for something I can eat. You know, and I'm not crazy about diet. I mean, I eat a lot of things, but, you know, I was looking around, and I'd say 90%, 95% of what was sold was either deep fried or hot dog or sausage related, which is fine. I finally found a lobster roll in one place that had that kind of food, and it was wonderful. But I got to thinking, you know, we often say of our why don't they put on positive ads? Because they don't work. Why don't they sell healthy food at the ballpark? Because people don't buy it. You know, it's very simple. We often want to blame the external message bringer or the external entity that's not doing what we think is in the best interest of everyone. But the way our system works is quite simple. The way it works today, quite simple. If it doesn't pay, you don't do it. If it doesn't make the most money, you don't do it. Your stockholders won't let you. A good way to get fired as CEO of a corporation is to put people over profits. You know who does that? Who's stated since he began his company that that's what he would do is Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook. He said in the IPO announcement when they went public, I don't care about money. I want the world to be connected. And the stock has plummeted. Because how are you going to make more money on Facebook? How are you going to make more money on Facebook? I'm a stockholder. I don't care what you do for the world. How are you going to make more money on Facebook? That's all that matters. And we can say it should be different, but until the consumers are different, it won't be. Because you know the people that are selling stuff will sell anything. And if there's a market for uplifting positive things, there will be someone to rush in to sell it to you. But until then, there won't be a market because we're stuck in sick, not sick. Saying I'll only accept it with grace and ease sometimes. And if I have to struggle or strain, I won't follow through. If I'd followed that advice when I first got into this teaching, I wouldn't be in this teaching. If I was looking for a sign from God that I was in the wrong place, losing my information twice, on the other hand, what I realized later was I don't like organized religion, and this was a good sign I was in the right place. I often tell people, if you don't like organized religion, you'll love us. Because we're not very organized. We lose crap all the time. We forget to send stuff. It is. That's just kind of. So it's all how you look at it. But the idea of those salmon that seek the fastest flowing water as they move through that incredibly, what must be just a painful journey, and they have this incredible instinct to reproduce, to go through all that they have to go through, to get back to that original place where they were spawned to spawn again. And they don't look for the easiest path, they look for the most effective path. That's how you get to thriving. For the salmon, it means that seed gets perpetuated. For you or me, it means your greatest splendor comes out into the world and becomes available. The genius that you brought here gets to be experienced by all. And you get to have the experience of developing, experiencing, and giving your genius, which is what we came here to do. We came here to be fulfilled. But if I'm stuck over here, as most people are, it's very hard to be fulfilled. So what do? We look for something that'll make us temporarily happy. And that will be different things for different people, In Boston, when I was up in Boston, we were driving back down on Friday afternoon to go to the airport, and all this traffic. Which I'm used to, being from LA. But East Coast traffic's different. On Friday afternoon, everybody's going to the shore. And it's usually a longer distance to the shore than it is here. And you can actually get in the water because it's not 56 degrees. And all these people, they're going to the Cape. The ones going south are going to the Cape. The ones going north are going up to New Hampshire or Maine to go camping. And every Friday, they get into these giant expressways of cars that go about 3 miles an hour, and then they do it again on Sunday night to be happy. Because the life that they live is so unfulfilling in many cases. You go into a cubicle and then you leave a cubicle. That's sick, not sick. When I just gotta have some fun. Because I can't stand what I'm doing. If I have to sit and think about what I'm doing, I'll go crazy. But when you're in thriving, you're having fun while you're doing what you're doing. And if you've seen someone that lives at that level, you've seen something pretty amazing. And if you've been at that level, it's not because you're lucky. It's because you know how to use your mind. And to get from here to here, what I have to be willing to do is go through the recalculating moments, which means I don't know what's coming next. I'm at risk. The truth is, when I'm over here, I'm at risk too. The greatest security, or the greatest illusion in humanity is that we're secure. We never really are. And when we try to create security, the only way to do it is to somehow block off an element of the truth that we decide not to look at. You know, like we do with global warming. I was talking to a friend at the retreat I was at in Massachusetts, there from Fayetteville, Arkansas, which is kind of the center of where the drought has been geographically. She said, you can smell the corn cooking in the field. As you drive through, it smells like everybody's doing a barbecue. The greatest drought since the Dust Bowl of the 1930s. And we're like, yeah, but, you know, we got other things to worry about. You know, is Jersey Shore going to be re-up this year? Are we going to Mars? But that might be what we need to do. You know, we do that. We can do that as a culture because we do it individually. We sometimes don't want to look at what we don't want to look at. And we decide, especially in this teaching, it can be really kind of, you know, creatively sneaky, where when we start to look at, we say, oh, I'm going to look at the truth. And I look at the truth, it feels uncomfortable. I say, well, that must be the wrong truth. Because it should be filled with grace and ease. Right? Well, sometimes it isn't. Why do I struggle when I'm moving in the right direction sometimes? Because I've already created a consciousness that requires that I move through that struggle to overcome it, to overcome that idea. It's not because the struggle was inherent in it. You know, why, you know, I could sit back and forth, why me? Why was my membership lost? Because that's what I needed at that moment, I guess, to wake up. So you can do your treatment with and say the words with grace and ease. But I hope also at some little recess in your mind you say, I'm also open to recalculating. I'm also open to being in the unknown. I'm also open to being uncomfortable, because if I'm truly not happy and fulfilled with where I am, the path to thriving goes through uncomfortable. And your GPS will take you there. Your inner guide. It will do that for you. So let's know that truth together for you and for me, that we move into a thriving place, all of us, and we serve this planet and humanity and all creation in the most positive, uplifting way that it can possibly be served. Thank you, and namaste.